Remember to vote and watch your vote count on NBC News.
Doug Adair and Angela Pace, and coming up next, why are cancer rates higher on the south side of Columbus?
Who threw the first punch in the Grandview Heights school board fight?
Case that was filed some 10 years ago, finally settled today.
And new prestige for the little brown jug.
Hi, I'm Gail Hogan, and this is my son Connor. And this year the March of Dimes is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And on the one hand, we want to look back and rejoice at the fact that millions of healthy babies have been born in this country. On the other hand, because every 2 minutes a baby is born with a birth defect, we want to look forward to what needs to be done, and we want you to look forward with us. Thanks for your continued support of the March of Dimes and its fight against birth defects.
It's Lazarus 3-day certified sale and clearance. Save 20 to 50% store-wide starting Thursday.
Lazarus, oh yes!
You are watching WCMH-TV, Columbus, Ohio. This is Newswatch 4 with Doug Adair, Mona Scott, Angela Pace, meteorologist Jim Goodall, and the Dean of Central Ohio Sportscasters, Jimmy Crum.
Good evening. Questions about cancer and its causes making news in Columbus tonight, and not everyone is satisfied with the answers.
The Ohio Health Department says that Columbus residents are more likely to get cancer than are Ohioans in general, and why is not known. It's one of a number of questions raised by a study of cancer on the city's south side. It was made public tonight.
Bob Singleton says the Ohio Health Department study was prompted in part by citizen concerns that chemical leaks at a South Side plant may have increased the likelihood of cancer.
May 1984, a safety release valve at the Georgia Pacific plant on Watkins Road releases 2,000 pounds of liquid resin containing toxic phenol and formaldehyde, a chemical plume that settled over the city's south side. Included in the fallout, fear that exposure to the chemicals had caused an increased incidence of cancer. The good news is that apparently has not happened. An Ohio Health Department survey of cancer deaths in the south side found only slightly more than expected compared to Columbus as a whole. More bothersome is what was learned of the cancer that occurred.
What we found was that for all the different types of cancer combined in the south side area, for white men, the rate was significantly higher than the rest of the city. For the total population, we found lung cancer to be high.
Reasons for the abnormalities are not known, and the experts say they cannot definitely be linked to Georgia Pacific's chemical spill.
You may recall that our conclusions were that we could not say specifically that there was any diseases specifically related to these acute occurrences.
Despite the assurances, not everyone in the audience was convinced.
I got a little girl here, 3 years old. I got a little boy, 8 years old. He complains consistently of being sick. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Angela, we have a map of the survey area that we're going to be showing you. It is, this area of the south side has approximately 71,000 residents. The health department officials said they could not go door to door and talk to all of them, so what they did instead was study death certificates, specifically death certificates of people who died of cancer, and that's where they came up with their determination that the actual number of deaths by cancer in the south side compared to what was expected, according to statistics, considering Columbus as a whole, that there was not a terrific difference between those two numbers. In fact, what the survey called not statistically significant. So they said that's a reason not to be concerned. Not statistically significant, of course, unless one of them is you or a loved one.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Lung cancer is the #1 killer cancer in this country, but tonight researchers are holding out new hope. Preliminary findings indicate the development of a new test that can detect lung cancer in its very early stages, as much as 2 years before it causes symptoms and begins to spread.
Took the doctors and nurses in the city workhouse longer than it should have to discover cancer in a woman inmate. That was 9 years ago, and she spent 3 days naked on a cell floor before she was taken to a hospital to die. The final settlement in the Noble Jackson wrongful death suit was finally reached today. 2 former workhouse nurses agreeing to pay the estate of Noble Jackson $25,000, Settlements earlier by the city of Columbus and a former workhouse doctor bring the total damages in the case to just over $190,000. Noble Jackson was 21 when she died, and the settlement now goes to her teenaged son.
Ohio's Court of Appeals is expected to issue its ruling Thursday in the Janet Cox case. The question, can the Columbus woman be jailed for a drug habit because that habit endangers the health of her unborn child? One expert tells Ben Piscatelli that a ruling against Cox could mean new laws for expectant mothers everywhere.
A future hearing will determine if Janet Cox violated parole by taking cocaine and heroin. But she also faces charges of child endangerment because juvenile court judge Charles Petrie has ruled her drug habits are a threat to her unborn child. In doing so, Petrie is saying the fetus is a person, something the Supreme Court has failed to say, but something mothers in this Lamaze class can understand. They say Janet Cox is threatening more than her life.
Well, if it comes out as a human being, the chances are it's going to be brain dead or just mentally retarded or physically retarded, and it ain't going to have much of a life.
OSU law professor David Goldberger believes the appeals court will side with Janet Cox, if only to avoid creation of new laws that govern pregnancy.
I mean, at a certain point, could we legislate, for example, in the General Assembly that women with viable fetuses cannot drink coffee? They cannot drink wine. It seems to me that if a fetus is a person, that would be a logical and a legitimate kind of legislation.
The Cox case is testing the limit of court power to protect the unborn. And if the law is somehow redefined because of it, that definition will be written long after Janet Cox gives birth to a baby drug damaged or otherwise. Ben Piscatelli, Newswatch 4 Columbus.
Janet Cox is more than 8 months pregnant and is in University Hospital awaiting the birth of her 5th child.
You can help to be the referee on this one, a fight among school board members in Grandview Heights, a real fight with fists that came with an argument over a levy proposal today. Member Jim Gusty says that he tried to defend a senior citizen and school board president Paul Panzera started swinging. First we hear from Gusty and then Panzera.
I asked him not to do that because I said that the senior citizen had a right to be here. It was a public meeting, and he has a right to his own opinion, and he shouldn't be intimidated by a school board member for having that opinion. Well, I was holding a styrofoam cup of water, and Mr. Panzera smashed it against my suit. And while I looked down to see all the damage to my suit, he punched me in the eye and then in the jaw.
All I can say is Mr. Gusty is a total outright liar at this point. That is a false statement. There was no argument with me or any other senior citizen in that point. As I saw his hand come up to my face, and at which time I felt liquid hit me, find out it was water. My initial reaction was to defend myself, and I had no idea what this man was going to do, and yes, I did punch him, and was in total self-defense.
Jim Gusty has an obvious black eye, and he says a torn cornea, and he has filed charges now against the Grandview Heights School Board President, Paul Panzera.
Students in Reynoldsburg, east of Columbus, got a chance to hear from one of the men who wants to be this country's vice president, Dan Quayle, meeting with 1,400 young people, discussing education, drug abuse, and national defense, and once again defending his qualifications for office.
The very first, I was new. People didn't know who I was. They went off on all sorts of directions, printed a number of rumors. And once they tracked down all the rumors and now they found out that there's nothing there, they're starting to focus a bit, okay, what does he have to offer? And I think the American people will see that I have a lot to offer.
Some scheduling changes made today reportedly angered the Republican candidate. Quayle's campaign trips were shifted so that he wouldn't be in South Bend, Indiana, the same day as his running mate, George Bush. Quayle says he just wants to know what his campaign schedule is going to be.
Michael Dukakis is campaigning in Youngstown today and noting how George Bush is always trying to label him as a liberal. He told union workers the only label that he's interested in is Made in America, and he told them about his $1.5 billion economic development plan to give incentives to companies that relocate in areas like Youngstown, where 15,000 steel jobs have been lost. And Dukakis says that Bush hasn't been to see them because he doesn't care about working people.
We've got an epidemic on Wall Street and in this country of billions and billions of dollars of acquisitions of companies, hundreds of millions of dollars being made by sharp operators. Folks, I'm not interested in the sharp operators. I'm interested in the lathe operators and the machine operators and people all over this country who work for a living.
Dukakis accepted a flower from a Youngstown State University student who said she was worried about getting a job after graduation. Kitty Dukakis, meanwhile, is feeling better tonight. She spent last night in a Minneapolis hospital after complaining of fever and chills.
President Reagan goes to the Cleveland area tomorrow. Vice President George Bush comes back to Columbus again, coming back on Thursday.
And that is a rally at the Nationwide Plaza at 10 o'clock in the morning. More new jobs for Columbus at Sears.
And this was Election Day in Israel, an election day marked with violence.
From Touchstone Pictures, after her divorce, Anna Dunlap made a choice to raise her child on her own, to share her life with a new lover.
He's adorable.
But now a court is forcing her to make the most shattering choice of all. Now she must choose between her relationship
I love you, Anna. I love you.
and her child.
This court makes a condition of that custody that you give up your relationship with Mr. Cutter. What would your response be?
Diane Keaton, The Good Mother, rated R.
Starts Friday at a theater near you.
Johnson, David Johnson for judge. Johnson has the right experience to be an excellent judge.
In the military and as a prosecutor, I've made the hard decisions that demand knowledge, leadership, and judgment.
David Johnson.
Michael Close for judge.
My experience as a trial attorney, court referee, prosecutor, and suburban mayor is the best experience to be a good judge.
With that experience, Michael Close has won the preference poll and all the major endorsements.
When I talk with my constituents, the problem of the federal deficit frequently comes up. Our economy is strong, but we need to control government spending, balancing what we spend with what we take in, just like we must do with our family checking accounts. If you've checked my votes, we wouldn't have a federal deficit, and we would have a constitutional amendment to require a balanced budget. That's why I want to be reelected, to keep working in Congress to protect our economic recovery.
Chalmers Wiley, working for you.
McDonald's presents Holiday Huggable Muppet Babies.
Oh, did someone mention a hug, Kermie?
Right now, get your kids Baby Kermit, Baby Fozzie, or Baby Piggy. They're soft and huggable for a special price with any McDonald's food purchase.
Do you know where I could get a hug?
No, but if you sing a little of it, I think I can follow along.
Holiday Huggable Muppet Babies at McDonald's. A portion of the proceeds of each Muppet Baby plush toy will be donated to Ronald McDonald Children's Charities.
Fire deliberately set in downtown Columbus tonight on the near south side of that downtown area. Firemen slightly hurt. It was a vacant brick double on East Noble. That's in the Main and 4th Street area. Someone had last lived in this home about a year ago. It was slated for demolition. Fire officials say that evidence of a flammable liquid was found in what had been the dining area. New warehouse distribution center to be built by Sears off Georgesville Road on the west side of Columbus. We are talking about hundreds of new jobs, and Sears wants its customers to know that the nation's largest retailer is aware of their absence lately because of the falling sales and lack of profits, and Sears is going to change. No longer just the Sears brands to be sold, but many other brands of merchandise. 200 new stores to be opened in the next 4 years, many of them specialty stores, and pricing to compete with the discounters. Big sales between now and Christmas to get rid of the old things. And something new on High Street tonight in the short north area of Columbus. It is a bridge that is no longer closed, and maybe you can sleep a little later in the morning knowing that you no longer have to waste time detouring around the bridge that goes over I-670. It has been closed for repairs since last July. It was opened in time this evening for the rush hour.
Election Day in Israel has been marked by violence. 3 people hurt when a firebomb was thrown into the car that was carrying them to the polls to vote. Police say young Palestinians in East Jerusalem hurled the Molotov cocktails, and 4 people were killed when Israeli fighter jets raided guerrilla bases in Lebanon. Meanwhile, Israel television is projecting a tie between the left-wing Labor Party and the conservative Likud bloc. But early exit polls show the Likud has a slight edge and has a better chance of forming a coalition government. Full results expected tomorrow. Crews in Hollywood are still cleaning up after Halloween night got a little out of control. About 100,000 partiers, many of them decked out in costumes, took to the streets for the traditional sidewalk parade. But that parade became a riot, a free-for-all. The revelers threw rocks and bottles, smashed windows, and ransacked stores. About 150 police officers called in. 3 officers were hurt, 1 man hospitalized with a gunshot wound. 23 people in all arrested. James Dean was a Hollywood legend, even though he actually starred in only 3 movies. Today, 33 years after his death in an auto accident, the unveiling of a bust of Dean, that unveiling in Los Angeles. Dean himself had commissioned the work back in 1955, just before he died. The bust creator, sculptor Kenneth Kendall, is donating the piece to the city of Los Angeles as a memorial. Dean died at the age of 23. He had starred in the movies East of Eden, Giant, and his signature film, Rebel Without a Cause. All good movies.
And as you say, though, just such a short time. Will they remember us 30 years after?
I'm sure they'll remember you. I mean, already people remember you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jim is waiting with your weather.
For people who really love good food, for people you really love, give them something really good from Big Bear and give them a Big Bear hug.
And give them good food at great prices, like Harvest brand bacon. Buy one, get one free. Purnell's Old Folks Country Sausage, $1.79. And Jenny O sliced turkey breast, $3.99.
Give them a Big